The control room at the United Nations Space Command, UNSC, was abuzz with frenzied activity as multiple reports of an unidentified flying object entering Earth's atmosphere poured in. Captain Lucas Gray, military liaison to the UNSC, watched the large screens displaying various data streams and radar images. "Status report," Lucas barked, his gaze fixed on the approaching blip marked on the radar. Lieutenant Sean Parkers, the communications officer, adjusted his headset, responding with a hint of urgency. "Object is decelerating as it enters the stratosphere, Captain. No known signatures. It doesn't match anything in our databases." Lucas frowned, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "Options?" "Could be a meteor," suggested Major Alan Rivers, the defense strategist who stood to Lucas's left. "But its path is too controlled. It's not natural." The room fell silent as the object slowed further, hovering above the Atlantic Ocean. It was then that the true nature of the situation became apparent. This was no meteor. "Get me a visual," Lucas commanded. Seconds later, the main screen flicked to a live feed from a surveillance drone hovering near the object, a sleek metallic craft unlike any terrestrial design, gleaming under the sun. "It's definitely not one of ours," Lucas murmured, stepping closer to the screen. "Should we initiate first contact protocols?" asked Sean, his hand hovering over a console laden with switches and buttons. "Yes, and get me the Secretary General on the line, now," Lucas replied, without taking his eyes off the screen. As preparations were made for first contact, Dr. Eli Turner, the head of the Scientific Advisory Board, joined Lucas, watching the alien craft with a mixture of awe and apprehension. "Ever thought you'd see the day, Lucas?" Eli asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Can't say I did, Eli. We're not just making history, we're meeting it," Lucas replied, his focus unwavering. The Secretary General, a stern-looking man in his late 50s named Harold Jensen, appeared on another screen, his expression grave. "Captain Gray, what's the situation?" Lucas briefed him quickly. "Sir, we have an unidentified craft. It's shown no signs of aggression, but it's clearly not from Earth. We're about to establish contact." "Proceed with caution, Captain. The whole world is watching," Jensen advised. Lucas nodded, turning back to Sean. "Open a channel, all frequencies, universal greeting protocol." Sean executed the command, and a series of harmonic tones designed to be universally recognizable as a peaceful greeting played out into space. Minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness until a crackle over the speakers gave way to a clear, articulate voice. "This is Commander Tavral of the Threxian vessel Harmony. We come in peace and seek dialogue." Lucas took a breath, steadying himself. "This is Captain Lucas Gray of the United Nations Space Command of Earth. We receive you, Commander. How may we assist?" Tavral's reply was cautious. "Our ship is damaged, and we require immediate sanctuary. We are refugees from a conflict far beyond your star system." Lucas exchanged a glance with Eli, who nodded slightly. Turning back to the microphone, Lucas responded, "Commander Tavral, Earth grants you permission to land. We will coordinate a safe passage for your vessel." As the Threxian ship began its descent, Lucas, Eli, and the rest of the UNSC team prepared to step into the unknown. Meeting with an alien civilization was risky, but turning them away was never an option. As they geared up to leave for the landing site, Lucas felt the weight of the moment. "Let's go make history," he said, leading his team out of the control room. Their steps echoed in the corridor, a sound soon to be drowned out by the cheers of humanity, or the repercussions of their choices. In the aftermath of the Threxians' arrival, the UNSC briefing room was filled with tension as top military and government officials gathered around a large, oval table. Lucas stood at the head, a series of images and data projected behind him, showing the sleek, alien craft now securely positioned in a guarded hangar. "Ladies and gentlemen," Lucas began, his voice commanding attention, "the Threxians come not as conquerors, but as refugees. Their planet has been ravaged by a war with the Zaltrax Alliance, a formidable force with capabilities beyond our current understanding." Major Alan Rivers leaned forward, interjecting, "What are the odds they'll follow the Threxians here?" Lucas clicked to the next slide, a star map highlighting the potential trajectories from Threxian space to Earth. "Hi. The Threxians believe it's only a matter of time before the Zaltrax attempt to track them down, and when they do, they'll find Earth in their path." Secretary General Jensen frowned. "What's our strategy if it comes to a confrontation?" Lucas glanced at Dr. Eli Turner, who stood ready with technical readouts. "Eli?" Eli nodded, stepping up. We've been analyzing the technology from the Threxian ship. There's potential for advancement in our own systems, but realistically, we're outmatched in terms of firepower and defense. A murmur swept through the room, a mix of concern and disbelief. Lucas raised his hands, signaling for silence. Which is why we need to think differently. Traditional combat strategies won't work here. We need something unexpected. Captain Jasmine Miles, a tactical operations officer, looked skeptical. Are we seriously considering fighting, given our disadvantage? Lucas met her gaze firmly. We need to prepare for all possible scenarios, Captain Miles. If the Zoltrax reach Earth, it's not just the Threxians they'll target. Our entire planet could be at risk. The room settled into an uneasy quiet as the gravity of the situation sank in. Lucas continued, We've always prided ourselves on our ingenuity and ability to adapt. It's time we harness that fully. I propose we start by retrofitting our existing decommissioned satellites and other orbital debris with whatever advanced tech the Threxians are willing to share. We turn our space junk into a first line of defense. Dr. Eli chuckled softly, breaking the tension slightly. Turning trash into treasure, so to speak? Lucas smiled briefly at the quip. Exactly. It sounds unconventional, but it may just be unconventional enough to work. Secretary General Jensen nodded slowly, processing the strategy. And the Threxians? Will they support this? They've offered their full cooperation, Lucas replied. Their survival is intertwined with ours now. They bring knowledge of the Zoltrax's tactics and weaknesses, which could prove invaluable. The meeting continued with discussions on logistics, potential risks, and the political ramifications of engaging in an interstellar conflict. As plans were set in motion, Lucas felt a familiar thrill, the kind that came from facing the unknown and daring to meet it head-on. As the officials dispersed, Major Rivers caught up with Lucas. Think this is going to work, Captain? Lucas's expression was resolute as he clapped a hand on Rivers' shoulder. It has to, Alan. We've got the whole world counting on us. With the stakes higher than ever, Lucas's plan was set into motion, initiating a global effort that would either be Earth's greatest defense or its most spectacular failure. Either way, history would remember their choice to fight, to protect their home, and to stand with their new allies against a common foe. ###. Chapter 3. A Ridiculous Plan. Lucas stood in front of a large holographic display in the UNSC's main strategy room, outlining his unconventional plan to a skeptical audience. The room was filled with military officials, scientists, and engineers from around the world, all there to discuss Earth's defense strategy against the impending Zoltrax threat. We're going to turn our space debris into an improvised defense network, Lucas stated, pointing to a detailed schematic of satellites and other space junk currently orbiting Earth. Each piece will be retrofitted with propulsion systems and rudimentary weaponry, using both Earth technology and what we can glean from the Threxians. Captain Jasmine Miles couldn't hold back a chuckle. You're serious? You want to weaponize our trash? Lucas nodded, his face serious. Precisely. The Zoltrax will be expecting conventional defenses. They won't anticipate a barrage of unpredictable makeshift weapons. Dr. Eli Turner stepped forward, reinforcing Lucas's idea. Look, it might sound crazy, but we've run simulations. The chaotic nature of these improvised satellites could actually work in our favor. They'd be hard to target and could create confusion and disruption in the enemy's ranks. General Anderson, a grizzled veteran of Earth's terrestrial conflicts, shook his head. I've seen a lot of wild ideas in my time, but this takes the cake. Still, desperate times call for desperate measures. What do you need to get started? Lucas smiled, relieved to see some of the initial resistance melting away. We'll need engineers, coders, and materials. A global effort. We have to move quickly before the Zoltrax find us. As the meeting adjourned, teams were formed and assignments were given. Lucas found himself shoulder to shoulder with Eli and Jasmine, coordinating the logistics of their ambitious project. A week later, Lucas and his team stood in a massive hangar filled with decommissioned satellites and piles of space debris brought down from orbit. The place buzzed with activity as engineers and scientists worked tirelessly to retrofit each piece. Jasmine handed Lucas a tablet, showing the progress on one of the prototypes. We've managed to integrate Threxian propulsion systems with our guidance tech. It's not pretty, but it should work. Lucas studied the data, nodding in approval. Good. We need as many of these operational as possible, as fast as possible. Eli approached, wiping sweat from his brow. The Threxians have been incredibly helpful. Their tech is light years ahead of ours, but they've managed to simplify things for us. We're actually making progress. Lucas watched as a team tested a propulsion system on a satellite, watching it hover and move according to their commands. We might just pull this off, he murmured. Late that night, Lucas sat in his temporary quarters, reviewing the latest reports. The door creaked open, and Eli walked in, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Thought you could use a break, Eli said, handing a cup to Lucas. Thanks, Lucas replied, taking a sip. How are you holding up? Eli shrugged. Honestly, I'm exhausted, but I believe in this. It's insane, but it might be just insane enough to work. Lucas chuckled. That seems to be the consensus. You know, when I proposed this, I half expected to be laughed out of the room. Instead, you inspired a global effort, Eli pointed out. People want to fight for their home. They just needed someone to show them how. Lucas looked at his friend, appreciating the support. Here's to hoping we're ready when the Zaltrax come. Eli raised his cup. To hope, and a bit of madness. The next few weeks were a blur of constant activity. Lucas and his team worked around the clock, coordinating the efforts of nations, supervising the retrofitting of space debris, and integrating Threxian technology into their makeshift fleet. Reports from the Threxians indicated that the Zaltrax were getting closer. The pressure was immense, but Lucas found solace in the unity and determination of the people around him. One evening, Jasmine approached Lucas as he inspected one of the nearly completed satellites. We're almost there, Lucas, but I have to ask, what if this doesn't work? Lucas paused, considering her question. Then we go down fighting. But I believe it will work. The element of surprise is on our side. Jasmine nodded, a fierce look of determination in her eyes. Then let's make sure it does. As the final preparations were made, the team took a moment to step back and admire their handiwork. Hundreds of retrofitted satellites and pieces of space debris were ready to be launched into orbit, forming a chaotic yet potentially effective defense network. Lucas addressed his team, his voice filled with conviction. We've done something incredible here. When the Zaltrax come, they won't know what hit them. We're ready. The global efforts had turned Earth's space into a buzzing workshop. As the day of the potential confrontation approached, Lucas's plan had mobilized nations, bringing together the best minds and the fiercest patriots to work on what was colloquially being called the junk fleet. In the high-tech command center, Lucas reviewed the deployment strategies with his core team. The room was lined with screens showing simulations, status updates, and a live feed of Earth's orbit, now dotted with retrofitted satellites. All right, team, let's run through this one more time, Lucas said, his voice calm but authoritative. He pointed to a large digital map displaying the trajectory of the incoming Zaltrax fleet. The satellites are in position. We need to ensure the synchronization of the launch sequences is flawless. Mistakes could cost us dearly. Captain Jasmine Miles, standing beside a console, nodded in agreement. The synchronization software has been updated with the latest algorithms from the Threxians. We're as ready as we'll ever be. Dr. Eli Turner chimed in from his station, cluttered with tech and tools. The propulsion systems are more robust than we initially thought. These things can really move, and with the unpredictable patterns we've programmed, they should be hard to track. Lucas turned to his communications officer, Lieutenant Sean Parkers, who was coordinating with various global sites. Sean, what's the word from our international partners? Sean looked up from his console. All systems are green across the board. Every participating nation has confirmed readiness. We're seeing unprecedented cooperation, Captain. General Anderson, overseeing the military aspect, grunted his approval. Let's hope this patchwork defense holds up under real fire. The atmosphere was thick with tension, yet there was an underlying current of hope. Each member of the team knew the stakes. They were not just defending their own countries, but the entire planet. Lucas gathered his team for a final briefing. This isn't just about technology or warfare. It's about resilience. Our ability to adapt and overcome defines us. The Zaltrax won't know what hit them. We're using their assumptions against them. They expect a fledgling species to falter under pressure. We're going to show them exactly how wrong they are. The team nodded, their faces set with determination. As they dispersed to their respective stations, Lucas took a moment for himself, looking out at the bustling command center, a hive of activity and anticipation. The public, meanwhile, was on edge. News outlets were continuously broadcasting updates, and social media was abuzz with discussions and theories about the junk fleet. Across the globe, people looked to the skies, wondering if the next object they saw would be a Zaltrax warship. In small towns and major cities alike, families gathered to watch the news. In a small cafe in London, the tension was palpable as patrons clung to every piece of information being relayed on the television. "Do you think this will work?" a young woman asked her companion, her eyes not leaving the screen. Her friend, a young man in his 20s, shrugged. "It has to. It's all we've got." Back at the command center, the team monitored the advance of the Zaltrax fleet, now just hours away from entering effective range. Lucas checked in with every station, ensuring that morale remained high and focus sharp. Jasmine approached Lucas, her expression solemn. "It's almost time. The Zaltrax are faster than we anticipated. We'll have to initiate the attack sequence sooner rather than later." Lucas nodded, his gaze returning to the screens. "Let's do it. Begin the countdown. It's time to see if our junk fleet can turn the tide." As the countdown began, Lucas felt the weight of command heavy on his shoulders. Around him, the team worked with a quiet intensity, each member aware that the success of their unconventional plan hinged on perfect execution and a bit of good fortune. The world held its breath, waiting to see if humanity's daring gamble would pay off. Lucas stood resolute, ready to lead his team through whatever came next. The battle for Earth was about to begin. The command center was a vortex of focused activity as the countdown reached 0. Lucas watched the main screen, which displayed the first wave of retrofitted satellites moving into their attack trajectories. Beside him, Jasmine Miles monitored the response from the Zaltrax fleet, her face set in a mask of concentration. "Initiating first strike now," she announced, her voice steady despite the palpable tension in the room. As the command was given, the satellites, once mere space junk, propelled forward, darting towards the Zaltrax ships with surprising speed and agility. The screens showed the first interactions, bursts of light indicating successful contacts. "Direct hits on targets Bravo and Charlie," reported Sean Parkers, excitement bleeding through his professional demeanor. "Looks like they didn't see that coming." Lucas allowed himself a brief smile but remained vigilant. "Keep on them. Launch second wave and prepare for countermeasures." The battle unfolded with breathtaking speed. The Zaltrax, taken aback by the initial assault, scrambled their fighters, sleek vessels that moved with lethal precision. However, the chaotic movement of Earth's jury-rigged satellites created a defensive pattern that was hard to predict. Dr. Eli Turner, overseeing the tech analysis, updated Lucas. "The Zaltrax are having trouble locking onto our satellites. The irregular patterns are confusing their targeting systems." Lucas nodded, his mind racing through the next steps. "Good. Jasmine, push the next squadron into the fray. Let's keep them off balance." As more satellites zoomed into battle, an uneasy hope began to ripple through the command center. On Earth, crowds gathered around public screens watched in awe and anxiety as updates and live feeds reported the progress of the skirmish. In a small bar in New York, patrons cheered as a particularly large piece of space debris cleverly retrofitted with a propulsion pack smashed into a Zaltrax cruiser, causing it to veer off course. "Go Earth!" someone shouted, the sentiment echoed by many. Back at the command center, General Anderson watched the unfolding battle with a grudging respect. "I'll be damned. The crazy plan is actually working." Lucas, however, remained focused on the tactical display. "We've got them rattled, but expect them to adapt quickly. We need to escalate before they regroup." Following Lucas's command, the next phase of the plan was enacted. Earth's defense satellites, which had been held in reserve, now joined the chaotic ballet of debris. These satellites were equipped with more sophisticated weaponry, including electromagnetic pulse, EMP generators that had been adapted from Threxian technology. As the EMPs were activated, several Zaltrax ships lost power temporarily, drifting helplessly. Cheers erupted in the command center and around the world as the tide appeared to turn in Earth's favor. Lucas stood, eyes fixed on the screen, knowing that this was just the beginning. "Prepare all units for sustained engagement. This battle isn't over yet." Jasmine, maintaining her calm amidst the storm of activity, coordinated the movements of the fleet. "We're on it, Captain. All units have confirmed receipt of new orders." The battle raged on, with Earth's improvised arsenal performing beyond expectations. Yet Lucas knew that the Zaltrax would not be defeated easily. They were a formidable enemy, and the initial success was just the first chapter in what promised to be a grueling conflict. As the skirmish continued, Earth's forces remained vigilant, adapting to every new challenge. Lucas's leadership was a beacon, guiding his team through the chaos of battle with a steadiness that inspired confidence. This was humanity's first stand in an interstellar war, a stand made with the unlikeliest of weapons, and they were determined to defend their home, no matter the odds. Lucas watched as the Earth's makeshift fleet continued to disrupt the Zoltrak's advance. The success of their initial surprise had given way to a more protracted and grueling confrontation. Now, in the UNSC's main strategy room, he plotted the next crucial steps. "Captain, the Zoltraks are regrouping faster than anticipated," Jasmine reported, her eyes flickering over multiple screens that displayed real-time battle analytics. "Their next wave seems to be adapting to our tactics." Nodding, Lucas turned to Eli, who had been coordinating with the scientific teams on potential weaknesses in the Zoltrak's technology. "Eli, anything we can exploit further?" Eli adjusted his glasses, pointing to a schematic on his tablet. "Yes, the Zoltraks rely heavily on a specific bandwidth for their communications. We've developed a jamming device that could disrupt their coordination on a larger scale." Lucas's eyes lit up. "Deploy it with the next wave of satellites. Make sure every unit is synced up for a full-scale blackout." As the orders were issued, Lucas's team worked with a renewed vigor, aware that the success of this new strategy could significantly turn the tide in Earth's favor. Outside the strategy room, the world watched and waited. In cities like Tokyo, public viewing areas had been set up, where crowds gathered to watch the live feeds and updates. The atmosphere was tense, but each successful maneuver against the Zoltraks was met with cheers and applause. Back in space, the next phase began. Earth's satellites, now equipped with the new jamming devices, moved into position. The Zoltrak's fleet, already in formation for a counterattack, was suddenly hit with a wave of disruptive frequencies. "Jamming devices are active," Sean announced, monitoring the feedback with satisfaction. "We're seeing confusion and disarray in their ranks." Lucas, overseeing the operation, kept his expression controlled, but felt a surge of hope. "Push forward while they're down. Let's see how they handle chaos." The battle scenes broadcasted back to Earth showed Zoltrak ships colliding with each other and drifting off course, unable to maintain their sophisticated formations. The effectiveness of the jamming technique exceeded expectations, giving the human forces a significant advantage. General Anderson, observing the developments, allowed himself a rare smile. "Looks like the playing field just got a bit more even." Lucas, however, remained focused. "Keep pressure on every front. We can't give them a moment to recover." As the hours stretched on, the Zoltraks, renowned for their tactical prowess, struggled to adapt to the irregular warfare tactics employed by Earth. Each attempt to re-establish order was thwarted by another wave of debris-turned weapons crashing through their lines. Meanwhile, Lucas convened with his team to discuss the sustainability of their current strategy. In the strategy room, maps and live feeds covered every wall, a testament to the global effort being poured into the defense. "We need to keep innovating," Lucas stated firmly. "Every minute we keep them off balance is another minute we stay alive." "Ideas?" Jasmine suggested. "What about using the debris not just as weapons but as decoys? Large clusters could mimic fleet movements." Eli nodded in agreement. "Brilliant. It could spread their forces thinner, make them vulnerable to targeted strikes." Lucas approved the plan, and orders were sent out. As Earth's defense continued to morph and evolve, the Zoltraks found themselves unable to mount a coherent defense. Late into the night, Lucas stood alone for a moment, watching Earth from a viewing port, its surface serene and distant against the backdrop of space. The contrast between the calm beauty of the planet and the ferocity of the ongoing battle struck him deeply. "We're doing this for you," he whispered to the quiet Earth below. Reinvigorated, Lucas returned to the command center, ready to lead his team through the next phase of the battle. With each passing moment, Earth's defenses not only held but adapted, growing more unpredictable and effective against the alien threat. The tide was turning, and for the first time since the conflict began, victory seemed not just a possibility, but a tangible goal. Lucas knew the fight was far from over, but he also knew that humanity would not go down without a fierce, clever fight. The command center was a hive of activity as Lucas and his team prepared for what could be the final confrontation with the Zoltrak's fleet. Reports from the front lines indicated that the Zoltraks were gathering their remaining forces for a decisive strike, their movements suggesting a push towards Earth's orbital defense grid. "Captain, they're consolidating their forces. It looks like they're preparing for a final push, Jasmine informed, analyzing the latest satellite data streaming onto her screens. Lucas studied the tactical display, noting the clustering of Zaltrak's ships. They're desperate, trying to break through with sheer force. We need to meet their strength with our cunning. It's time for our ace in the hole. He turned to Eli, who had been working on integrating a powerful experimental weapon salvaged from the Threxian ship into one of the larger pieces of space debris. Eli, is it ready? Eli nodded, his face tense with concentration. Yes, it's risky, but the prototype is operational. We've dubbed it the Pulse Hammer. If we can get it close enough to their flagship, the EMP burst should disable it and any ship in its vicinity. Lucas clapped his hand on Eli's shoulder, a gesture of trust and reassurance. Set the coordinates. Jasmine, deploy the decoy squadrons to cover its approach. We only get one shot at this. As the team executed the orders, Lucas communicated with the Global Defense Forces, ensuring that all units were synchronized for the upcoming operation. The world watched, holding its breath as the plan unfolded in real time. The Pulse Hammer, disguised amidst a cluster of debris, began its slow, silent approach towards the Zaltrak's flagship. Meanwhile, the decoys, executing erratic maneuvers, drew the enemy's attention and fire away from the true threat inching closer. In the command center, the tension was palpable. Every crew member knew the stakes were high, with little margin for error. Lucas kept his eyes fixed on the screen, where blips and bursts of light marked the progress of their desperate gambit. Pulse Hammer is in position, Captain, Sean reported, his voice a mix of hope and anxiety. Lucas gave the order, his voice resolute. Activate it. The command triggered a massive electromagnetic pulse that rippled through space. The screens flickered momentarily under the strain of the feedback. When the visuals returned, cheers erupted around Lucas. The Zaltrak's flagship, along with its surrounding vessels, drifted lifelessly, their systems overwhelmed and shut down by the Pulse Hammer's powerful burst. We did it, Jasmine exclaimed, relief washing over her face. Lucas allowed himself a brief smile, but his eyes were already scanning the data. Status on the rest of their fleet? Eli responded, checking his readings. Most are in disarray, Captain. Without the flagship, their coordination is broken. We should press the advantage. With rapid commands, Lucas directed the remaining forces to mop up the disabled enemy ships, ensuring they could not recover. Earth's defenses, once seen as a last-ditch effort, had turned the tide decisively in their favor. As the final Zaltrak ships were neutralized, the realization that they had won began to sink in across the command center and around the world. People in cities and towns who had been glued to their screens took to the streets in jubilation. Lucas watched the celebrations from a screen in the corner of the command center, the weight of command easing from his shoulders. Notify the United Nations and all our global partners. The threat is neutralized. General Anderson approached Lucas, extending his hand. You did it, Captain. You led us through the impossible. Lucas shook his hand, feeling the camaraderie. We did it together, General. It was humanity's unity and ingenuity that saved us. As the crew began the processes of recovery and rebuilding, Lucas knew that this victory was more than just a military success. It was a testament to human ingenuity and the unyielding spirit of cooperation. Earth had not only defended itself against a superior enemy, but had also earned a place among the stars as a formidable presence. The final confrontation had ended, but for Lucas and Earth, a new chapter was just beginning. In the aftermath of their astonishing victory, the mood in the UNSC command center shifted from tense anticipation to subdued reflection. As the world celebrated the defeat of the Zaltrak's alliance, Lucas stood apart, gazing at the Earth from the large panoramic windows of the command center, his thoughts a complex tapestry of relief, triumph, and contemplation. Captain Gray, you should see this, Eli called out, breaking Lucas's reverie. He motioned Lucas over to a monitor displaying global reactions. From Tokyo to New York, massive crowds had gathered, waving flags and setting off fireworks, a collective outpouring of joy and national pride. It's incredible, isn't it? Eli remarked, a smile spreading across his face. They're calling it the greatest victory in human history. Lucas nodded, his expression thoughtful. It is a victory, Eli, but it's also a stark reminder of our place in the universe. We've stepped into a larger arena now. Things will never be the same. General Anderson joined them, his demeanor more relaxed than Lucas had ever seen it. That's true, Captain, but thanks to your leadership, we faced down an existential threat. Humanity will be stronger for this. Lucas turned back to the window, watching the Earth rotate slowly beneath them. Stronger, or perhaps more aware. We've seen what's out there now, both the dangers and the possibilities. Our strategies, our technologies, they'll all have to change. Jasmine approached, her usual composure mingled with a touch of awe. Not just our technologies, Lucas. Our entire mindset about what's possible has shifted. Today, junk turned into our saviors, thanks to you. There was a lot of luck involved, Lucas replied modestly, and desperation. But maybe that's what we needed to push us beyond our limits. As the leaders of the command center discussed the implications of their new reality, Sean came up with updates. Captain, the UN Secretary General is on the line. He wants to congratulate the team and discuss preliminary talks for a new global defense initiative. Thank you, Sean. Tell him I'll be right there, Lucas responded, then turned to his team. This is just the beginning, everyone. We need to be prepared for what comes next. Leaving the command center to take the call, Lucas felt the weight of future responsibilities pressing down on him. The world was looking to him for guidance in this new era, and he knew that the decisions made in the coming months would shape the future of humanity. Later, in a quiet corner of the observatory deck, Lucas took a moment for himself. The stars above, once a tapestry of distant lights, now felt like markers on a map, each one representing potential friends or foes. As he contemplated the vastness of space, a quiet voice interrupted his thoughts. Mind if I join you, Captain? Jasmine asked. Of course not, Captain Miles, Lucas replied, noticing her use of his title with a slight smile. They stood in silence for a while, watching the stars. Finally, Jasmine spoke. We've done something remarkable, Lucas, but I can't help wondering about the Zaltrax and the Threxians. Will there be peace now, or are we just at the beginning of something bigger? Lucas considered her words, his gaze still fixed on the cosmos. I've been thinking about that too. We've opened a door we can't close, but whatever comes, we'll face it like we did today, with ingenuity and courage. For now, though, let's just take this moment to watch the stars. As they stood together, the future remained uncertain, but one thing was clear. Earth was no longer just a silent spectator in the vast arena of space. It was a player, a defender of its own destiny, ready to engage with whatever the universe held next.